Welcome back, I'm Kim Baillie and this is Floral Art Online, and we're continuing our series of helping our new members online for their competition interpretations. So February 2024, the title is Whispers, a Floral Dialogue. So some interesting words in that, and one that would challenge me, I have to say, in terms of interpreting that class title. So whispers and dialogue are the things that I need to concentrate on. So what it tells me is, in terms of the plant material, whispers engenders in me an idea of something that's light and airy, and dialogue means that there has to be at least two parts to the interpretation. So whispers and dialogue, I would take it at face value. I'll tell you about a different interpretation in a minute, but at face value, whispers and dialogue means to me that I need something light and airy. I need repetition in the design so that it looks like there's dialogue happening, so that there's two things that are repeated in terms of a conversation. So I went and had a look around very quickly to see what I might have that I could help you with in terms of plant material, first of all. So whispers, obviously the tillandsia, old man's beard, grandfather beard, Spanish moss, whatever you call it, because you can separate that or you can group it together. So it could be that the having it like that might be the bulk part of the focal part of your design, and then the whispers might be the way the little tendrils come out away from that into the rest of the design. So obviously you can't just have that on its own. You're going to have something that it is draped around, or that looks like perhaps you might have two other flowers or branches, foliage, anything at all, that these can be whispering around. So perhaps you might have two very solid leaves, so aspidistra or Gymea lily, or something that's a broad solid leaf. I just saw it outside mother-in-law's tongue, so Sansevieria. And if you have those almost in parallel beside one another or facing one another, so it looks like it's the dialogue, then you could have the whispers in between. That would be like a lacy joining of those two to interpret it that way. And you mightn't have to use flowers at all. Even though it says that it's a floral dialogue, floral in terms of judging these days means plant material. Yes, some judges like to see flowers, and so perhaps it would be better to have, you might have your foliage, your solid foliage, and then have some graduated flowers down from that, and have your lacy, airy plant material in between. You might use ferns, and that could combine the dialogue of have them joining and coming together with the laciness rather than the old man's beard. The other thing that I thought of, it's in the pot still, Ripsalis. So once again, does that even in the pot, and perhaps I can combine it and make it as you know, with the potted fleur, foliage has to be growing in the medium, and the flowers that you put in go into a container inside the pot. So perhaps in some ways I could twist that around. Maybe it looks like there's a bit of a dialogue happening, and put some flowers in there. So these are the whispers around the flowers. So you have the flowers as a central part of your design. That can be anything. You could do any kind of just small central focal point as the floral part, and then have the whispers around it, and that might be the dialogue. The whispers might be the dialogue around it. The other thing, I'm actually preparing for a competition in a couple of weeks, and so I'm just prepping the willow, the tortured willow, into the shapes that I want. And I looked at that. I don't know how well you can see it against my loud top, but what I've done here is just pulled the branches together and put them into circles. So I could actually use that in terms of this interpretation as the structure for the design, because it looks like, I could make it look like they're all having dialogue. It's this big conversation that's happening all around. So they're conversation bubbles, I guess, is the way I'm seeing it at the moment. It might be just my interpretation, but I'm seeing it as conversation bubbles, dialogue bubbles, and then put something that was a very fine flower in it. So not sunflowers, not daisies, but something that's a little bit finer, a little bit lacier, a little bit like lisianthus, or something that's a softer flower in terms of looking at it, perhaps even gloriosa, and repeat it so that there is the whisper of this floral dialogue through these conversation bubbles as I see it. Now I know that's probably a little bit out there for some people, but I've been interpreting designs for a long time, so I tend to veer off into the unknown. Speaking of which, the other thing that might occur to you when you are looking at that title, when it says Whispers, a Floral Dialogue, might be Chinese whispers. And so how would we interpret that so that the judges understood that that was the first thing that came to your mind when you saw Whispers, a Floral Dialogue? So I would think that you would have almost a long, narrow container, and that you would start with and just have your flowers graduate, but have it go through a range of different flowers. So much the same as the Chinese whisper gets interpreted differently from the start to the finish, that you start off with even if it was a rose and something else, so say 2 or 3 flowers in that first section, and then a bit of a gap, and then bring all of those flowers together. So actually make a composite flower out of all of the individual ones that you have got. But I would also, just in case the judges weren't on the same wavelength as me, I would also put a little text in it and say Chinese whispers. Just call it that. Now, when you're putting notes onto a design, or explanations or clarification, you have to make sure that it's not just a bit of white paper that you've printed off the computer, that it actually is part of the design, so that it doesn't become separate to the design, and the judges will look at it and say, well, that's not part of the design, and they cut out everywhere that appears. So it needs to blend in to the design whenever you're doing anything. So often we'll have design titles that say a song title or a movie title or a TV show, and you need to, it will say that the show or the movie has to be named, or the song has to be named. When you're doing that in a design, you need to ensure that how you do that is part of the design, so that if it's something that you... So I'll tell you what I've done in the past. So it's mostly I've done it for movies, and because it's Australian stuff, I tend to use bark a bit. So I'll have a piece of bark where I have written the movie title on the bark, and the bark then becomes part of the design. So it's just placed within the design. So that's just an aside about if you're going to try and help the judges by saying something about how you interpreted the design. Don't go into a whole paragraph, just usually a couple of words. And in this case, just saying Chinese whispers will help them understand that that's how you interpreted that Whispers, a Floral Dialogue. So I hope that has given you some food for thought for this month, and I'll see you again next month for the March title. I'm Kim Baillie, and this is Floral Art Online.